The funeral had just begun when the unthinkable happened. A police dog, normally obedient, silent, perfectly trained, suddenly broke free, charged down the aisle, and threw himself onto the little girl's coffin. The room erupted in gasps. Mourners screamed. Officers rushed forward. But Rex wouldn't budge. He pressed his body against the child, growling at anyone who came near, as if someone in that room had killed her. At first, people thought it was grief, but then the dog lifted his head and stared directly at one man in the crowd. A growl rumbled so deep and sharp that even the priest stepped back in fear. Within minutes, officers would uncover a secret hidden in the girl's coffin. A secret her killer thought no one would ever find. But he didn't count on one thing. The dog knew the truth, and he refused to let her be buried with a lie. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. No one in the room could understand why the air felt so heavy. Funerals were always painful, but this one carried a weight that pressed on every chest, tightening every breath. The hall was silent, too silent, as mourners filled the space, dressed in black, their eyes red and swollen. At the front, beneath soft white lights, the little girl lay inside the open coffin, her tiny hands folded gently over her dress, her face peaceful as if she were only sleeping. She looked untouched by the tragedy that had shaken the entire town. Then the doors creaked. Rex entered slowly, deliberately, his handler struggling to steady his leash. The German shepherd's ears twitched, his eyes fixed on the coffin as though an invisible force were pulling him forward. Whispers rippled through the room. "Isn't that the police dog?" Someone murmured. "Why bring him here?" Another asked. But Rex didn't seem to hear any of them. His gaze never left the little girl. The moment his paws touched the carpet near the coffin, something changed. Rex pulled hard, breaking free from his handler's grip. Gasps erupted. Guests stepped aside as the dog sprinted forward, leaping onto the wooden platform with a desperate whine. Before anyone could react, he climbed into the coffin and curled himself protectively around the girl's still body, resting his head beside her cheek. Mourners froze. Some began crying all over again. An officer took a step forward, but Rex lifted his head and growled, a deep, warning sound that echoed through the hall. The officer stepped back immediately. No one dared to move after that. The girl's mother covered her mouth, her knees trembling. Why is he doing that?" she whispered, but no one had an answer. Even Rex's handler stood speechless, his hands shaking. The German shepherd wasn't simply mourning. He wasn't confused. He wasn't refusing to leave out of grief. He was guarding her. As if she wasn't just gone, but still in danger. And in that moment, every officer in the room felt it. Something about this funeral was terribly wrong. Before tragedy wrapped her name in sorrow. The little girl had been the light of her neighborhood, the kind of child who could make strangers smile, just by skipping past them. Her name was Lily Carter, a 5-year-old with golden curls, bright blue eyes, and a laugh so pure it echoed like wind chimes on a summer morning. Everyone knew her, not because she was loud or mischievous, but because she was gentle. She shared her snacks with other kids, left flowers on her elderly neighbor's porch, and hugged every dog she met, especially Rex. Lily's connection with the police dog had been almost magical. Rex belonged to Officer Daniels, but Lily treated him like her own protector. Every time she visited the station with her mother, Rex would trot toward her, tail wagging, lowering his head so she could wrap her tiny arms around his neck. Officers joked that Rex behaved better for Lily than for his handler. Her parents adored her. She was their miracle born after years of hoping, praying, and heartbreak. They treasured every drawing she made, every silly story she told, every sleepy kiss goodnight. No one imagined that a child so full of life could be taken so suddenly. So brutally. In the days before the funeral, people struggled to accept it. They decorated the streets with pink ribbons, her favorite color. Neighbors left stuffed animals on the family's doorstep. Officers lowered their flags to half-mast. But nothing filled the silence Lily left behind, and as she lay in that small coffin, dressed in the soft pink gown she once twirled in proudly, the entire town felt the same aching question in their hearts. How could someone so innocent be gone? And why did Rex, the dog she loved most, seem convinced that her story wasn't over? Rex hadn't been himself since the moment Lily went missing. Officer Daniels noticed it first. The German shepherd, usually disciplined and alert, had become restless, pacing back and forth in his kennel, whining at shadows, refusing food, and staring toward the station doors as if waiting for someone who never arrived. Every night, he scratched at the floor, letting out low, trembling whimpers that echoed through the quiet hallways. Daniels tried comforting him, but Rex wouldn't settle. His instincts were screaming, and the officer could feel it. 2 days before the funeral, things got stranger. Rex suddenly pulled violently on his leash during patrol, dragging Daniels toward the outskirts of town. His ears were stiff, nose raised, muscles tense. He sniffed the air as if catching a familiar scent, Lily's scent. Daniels tried to redirect him, but Rex growled softly, refusing to turn back. The dog's behavior was so intense that other officers watched with concern. It continued the next morning. When Daniels walked into the station, he found Rex sitting rigidly by the main entrance, eyes locked on the door. Every time it opened, Rex jolted forward, tail straight, breath quickening. He barked, not in aggression, but in urgency, like he was begging someone to let him out. When Daniels finally clipped his leash on, Rex dragged him outside again, nose pressed to the ground, following an invisible trail that ended abruptly near a crossing where Lily used to stop to pet him. But the day of the funeral changed everything. Rex wasn't just restless, he was frantic. He shook uncontrollably in the back of the patrol truck, claws scraping against the crate door. When Daniels reached in to calm him, Rex pushed past him and stared toward the funeral hall, pupils dilated, chest heaving. Daniels had never seen him behave this way, not even during dangerous operations. Something inside the dog knew the truth long before any human did. Rex wasn't mourning, he wasn't confused, he was trying to warn them, and soon every officer would understand exactly what he had been trying to say. It was supposed to be an ordinary Friday evening. Lily had spent the entire afternoon coloring on the living room floor while her mother cooked dinner, humming softly to herself. The sun dipped behind the trees, casting warm orange light through the windows, and Lily danced in it with her pink dress twirling around her like a tiny flame. Nothing about that night hinted at the storm about to break. Around 7:15 p.m., Lily asked if she could play in the backyard for just 5 more minutes. Her mother agreed. Lily never wandered far. The yard was fenced, safe, familiar. Her toys lay scattered across the grass, her little shoes neatly placed near the steps. It was a world built just for her, but when her mother called her inside, there was no answer. At first, she thought Lily was hiding. The little girl loved to play games, giggling behind bushes or peeking from behind the shed. But after several minutes of searching the yard, calling her name louder each time, panic began to creep in. The gate stood slightly open, barely an inch, but it was enough to steal the breath from her lungs. Within minutes, officers swarmed the neighborhood. Flashlights cut through the dark. Neighbors rushed outside with phones, calling her name as they jogged down sidewalks and alleys. Daniels arrived with Rex, hoping the dog would pick up Lily's scent instantly. Rex did. He pulled forward with unusual force, nose low, body tense, following a winding trail through the yard, across the street, and toward a narrow path behind the houses. Officers hurried after him, hearts pounding. But then, just as suddenly as he had started, Rex froze. His ears flattened. He growled at the darkness ahead, refusing to take another step. Something or someone had been there. Something that made Rex's instincts recoil. They searched for hours, then days, until the heartbreaking discovery brought the entire town to its knees. The night Lily disappeared was the night Rex's behavior changed forever, and nothing about that night would make sense. Until the truth finally came to light. The morning after Lily vanished, the entire town mobilized. Officers blocked off roads, volunteers formed search lines, and drones scanned rooftops and wooded trails. But despite the overwhelming effort, everyone knew the most important figure in the search was Rex. His nose was the sharpest in the unit, and he had never failed to track a missing person. Every officer pinned their hope on him. Rex started strong. He sniffed Lily's favorite scarf, his body stiffening as her scent filled his senses. Without hesitation, he darted forward, dragging Officer Daniels across the yard and toward the same path he had followed the night before. His pace quickened, breaths short and focused, tail pointing straight ahead like an arrow. For a moment, it felt like they were close, but then just like before, Rex stopped abruptly. He growled low, a deep vibration rumbling through his chest. The fur along his spine bristled, and he refused to take another step down the narrow trail. Officers checked the area, searching for footprints, tire tracks, discarded items, anything. But there was nothing. No signs of movement, no disturbances in the grass, nothing that justified Rex's sudden alarm. They tried redirecting him. Rex pulled to the right instead, heading toward a cluster of abandoned sheds behind an old farmhouse. Again, officers followed. Again, Rex froze. Same reaction, growl, tense body, refusal to continue. It was as if invisible walls blocked him, like something had deliberately erased Lily's trail. By late afternoon, Rex was shaking with frustration. Daniels knelt beside him, whispering, "It's okay, boy. We'll find her." But Rex didn't relax. His eyes remained fixed on the distance, full of worry, fear, and urgency. Somewhere beyond those dead ends, the truth waited. And Rex sensed it long before anyone else did. 3 agonizing days passed before the call came, in a call that froze the entire station. A hiker had spotted something in a dry creek bed on the outskirts of town. Officers raced to the location, hearts pounding, silently praying it wasn't what they feared. But deep down, they already knew. Rex knew too. The moment the patrol truck stopped, Rex began barking wildly, clawing at the crate door until Daniels released him. The dog bolted down the rocky slope, ignoring commands, drawn by an invisible thread of scent only he could follow. Officers hurried after him, their boots sliding on loose gravel, dread tightening around their throats. Rex stopped near a cluster of fallen branches. He let out a heartbreaking whine. There she was. Lily's small body lay gently curled, as if someone had placed her there with care. Her pink dress was dusty but intact, her hands resting near her face, her hair spread across the ground like a golden halo. She looked peaceful, too peaceful for the horror of what had happened. Her mother collapsed upon arrival, her screams echoing through the valley as officers tried to support her. Daniels knelt beside the little girl, his own eyes burning. But Rex approached her slowly, trembling, his head lowering until his nose touched her tiny hand. Then the German shepherd let out a sound no one had ever heard from him before, a low, broken cry that made even the toughest officers look away. Something was off, terribly off. There were no signs of struggle, no torn clothing, no defensive wounds. It looked nothing like a typical abduction. Lily had no visible injuries, except a faint bruise on her wrist, so faint the first responders barely noticed it. But Rex noticed something else. He circled the area, nose to the ground, then suddenly snapped his head toward the trees, growling at the empty woods as if someone still lingered there. Watching, the officers exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning. Back in the funeral hall, the atmosphere was thick with grief. The soft music playing in the background couldn't drown out the tension that rippled through the crowd. Everyone expected the ceremony to be quiet, respectful. But Rex shattered that illusion the moment he climbed into Lily's coffin. Now he lay pressed against her tiny body, refusing to move even an inch. Officer Daniels approached carefully, whispering, "Rex, come here, buddy." But Rex didn't respond. He lifted his head just enough to stare at Daniels, eyes filled with something the officer had never seen before, fear mixed with fierce determination. Then he lowered his head again, resting it protectively on Lily's shoulder, when one of the funeral staff stepped forward. Attempting to gently lift the dog out, Rex growled a deep, sharp sound that echoed through the entire hall. The man froze. Even those who didn't understand dogs understood this. Rex wasn't acting out of confusion. He was guarding her. From what no one knew, whispers spread quickly. Why is the dog doing that? Was he close to her? Did he sense something? The girl's mother, trembling, clutched her husband's arm and sobbed harder. Seeing Rex protect her daughter broke her all over again. Officer Daniels exchanged glances with the other officers. Rex had never behaved like this at any funeral, not even for fallen officers. This wasn't normal. Something was triggering him. The dog shifted suddenly, pushing his nose against Lily's dress, sniffing intensely as if trying to detect something hidden. Then he let out a soft whine, long trembling. Desperate. It wasn't grief. It wasn't confusion. It was a warning. And for the first time, people in the room began to feel it too. Something about this funeral didn't add up. Among the mourners standing near the back of the hall was Officer Grant, one of the first responders involved in the search for Lily. He had been quiet through most of the ceremony, his hat tucked under his arm, his gaze fixed firmly on the floor. But when Rex growled and refused to leave the coffin, Grant's head snapped up, his eyes sharp, alert, almost startled. Daniels noticed it instantly. While most people looked confused or emotional, Grant looked nervous. His jaw clenched, his fingers tapped restlessly against his badge, and he shifted his weight from one foot to the other as if he couldn't stand still. Every time Rex lifted his head, Grant stiffened, his breathing growing a little quicker. Rex noticed too. The German Shepherd's ears perked, eyes narrowing on Grant with icy intensity. He issued a low growl, not toward the coffin this time, but directly at the officer standing in the shadows. The room grew silent. People turned, confused, following Rex's line of sight. Grant stepped back immediately, raising his hands slightly. "Hey, what's wrong with your dog?" he said, forcing a shaky laugh. "He acting crazy today." But his voice cracked. Daniels studied him. Grant had never been afraid of dogs. He loved Rex. So why did he suddenly look pale? Why did sweat form at his temple despite the cool hall? Something wasn't right. Rex pushed himself halfway out of the coffin, muscles tensed, eyes locked on Grant like he had finally found what he'd been searching for since the day Lily disappeared. Grant swallowed hard, avoiding Rex's stare. "I don't know what he thinks he's doing," he muttered. But Daniels did. This wasn't random. This wasn't grief. Rex had recognized something or someone, and for the first time, Daniels wondered if Lily's death wasn't just tragic, but deliberate. The tension inside the funeral hall thickened like smoke. Everyone watched Rex with wide, fearful eyes as he slowly lifted his body out of the coffin, positioning himself between Lily and the crowd. His muscles tightened, his tail lowered, and his ears flattened, every sign of a canine bracing for danger. Daniels took a cautious step forward, but Rex barked sharply, stopping him in his tracks. The sudden bark echoed off the walls, bouncing through the room like a warning shot. The little girl's mother gasped, clutching her husband's arm. The priest stepped back, gripping his Bible tightly. Guests whispered, confused, frightened, unsure if they were watching a Grieving dog or a guardian sensing something unseen. Then Rex did something that made the entire room fall silent. He turned back toward the coffin and began sniffing Lily's dress with frantic urgency. His nose moved along the fabric, across her small hands, over the side of her neck, down to the faint bruise on her wrist. Each time he reached the bruise, Rex stiffened, growled softly, then looked toward the crowd again. Straight toward Officer Grant. Grant's face drained of color. "Daniels, get your dog under control," he snapped. But fear flickered in his eyes. Rex barked again, louder, sharper, his gaze locked on Grant like a laser. He pushed his nose against Lily's wrist repeatedly, whining in short bursts as if begging someone to understand. Daniels knelt beside him, trying to soothe him, but Rex ignored him entirely. He was focused on Lily, and on the truth her body was still trying to tell. A funeral attendant stepped forward nervously. "Maybe we should." Before he could finish, Rex lunged toward the edge of the coffin, barking at Grant with a ferocity that shook everyone. Daniels grabbed his harness just in time. Struggling to pull him back, Grant stumbled backward, stammering, What is wrong with that dog?" But the question wasn't the real one. The real question, the one spreading through the hall, whispered in trembling voices, was this: what had Rex just discovered that no one else had seen? And why was he pointing at Grant? The room had fallen into a suffocating silence. Every eye darted between Rex and Officer Grant, confusion twisting into fear. Daniels, still holding Rex's harness, gently tried to lower the dog back into the coffin to calm him. But Rex resisted, twisting his body, pushing his nose insistently toward Lily's wrist again. Daniels frowned. Something about the dog's focus felt deliberate, precise. He leaned closer, studying the faint bruise he had barely noticed before. Lily's skin looked untouched everywhere else, yet this small mark, no larger than a thumbprint, seemed oddly out of place. It wasn't the bruise of a fall. It wasn't a scrape. It looked almost like a pressure point. "Get me a light," Daniels murmured. A nearby officer handed him a small flashlight. Daniels aimed the beam at Lily's wrist. The crowd leaned forward as the bruise came into sharp focus, revealing a tiny puncture mark in the center, almost invisible to the naked eye. Daniels' breath caught. This wasn't from playing or falling. Rex whined urgently, pressing his paw against the edge of the coffin, as if urging him to look deeper. Daniels gently pulled back Lily's sleeve. Another bruise, another small puncture. The same pattern. The priest made the sign of the cross. Lily's mother collapsed into silent sobs. A hush rippled through the hall. The attending medical examiner, who had come as a guest, stepped forward, his expression shifting from sympathy to alarm. He knelt down, scanned the marks, and his face went pale. "This wasn't an accident," he whispered. "These marks, they look like restraint points. Someone held her, hard." The crowd gasped. Grant stiffened, swallowing hard. Rex growled, slow and steady eyes locked on the man who had suddenly started sweating under the funeral lights. The truth was no longer hidden. Lily hadn't simply died. She had been hurt. The funeral hall, once filled with quiet mourning, had transformed into a storm of whispers and trembling breaths. The discovery of the puncture marks changed everything. What had been accepted as a tragic, unexplained death now teetered on the edge of something far darker. The attending medical examiner rose slowly from the coffin, his face etched with shock. "This needs to be reported immediately," he said, voice tight. "We're reopening her autopsy." Lily's parents gasped. Her mother clutched her chest, trembling as the father steadied her. The priest stepped forward to comfort them, but even he looked horrified by what he had just heard. Daniels gently pulled Rex away from the coffin, holding him firmly by the harness. Rex didn't fight back this time. His job was done here. He'd shown them everything he could. but his eyes remained locked on Lily, soft whines rattling in his throat. Daniels whispered, "You did good, boy." But even he struggled to breathe. Officers surrounded the coffin now, documenting everything, taking photographs, making calls. A pair of detectives arrived within minutes, their voices sharp and urgent. "Seal the room." "No one leaves," one ordered as he scanned the crowd. Grant visibly tensed. He stepped back, pulling at his collar, sweat pooling at the edge of his hairline. Daniels watched him carefully, noticing every nervous twitch. Rex noticed too, his ears perked, his gaze shifting from Lily's wrist to Grant again. The medical examiner leaned over the little girl once more. "If these marks are what I think they are, then her cause of death wasn't natural. Someone applied pressure, probably to restrain her. And the bruises are too patterned to be accidental." A cold shiver swept through the hall. Lily hadn't wandered off. She hadn't gotten lost. She hadn't simply passed away. Someone had taken her. Someone had hurt her. Someone had staged everything. The detectives turned toward the officers. "Reopen every report. Re-interview every witness. And track every responder who was on the search team." Rex growled softly because one of those responders was standing in the room right now. The detectives wasted no time. Lily's coffin was carefully sealed for forensic transport, and officers began escorting everyone out for questioning. But Rex had other plans. The moment Daniels loosened his grip on the harness, Rex jerked forward with sudden force, nearly pulling him off balance. "Rex! Easy!" But the German shepherd wasn't listening. He bolted through the open doors of the funeral hall, nose to the ground, moving with laser-focused purpose. Daniels sprinted after him while detectives and officers followed close behind, tension rising with every step. Rex wasn't wandering, he was leading them. He tore across the parking lot, past the rows of cars, toward the woods bordering the cemetery. Daniels' heart pounded as branches whipped past. "Where are you taking us, boy?" he muttered through ragged breaths. Rex skidded to a stop at the tree line, the same direction he had refused to continue toward the night. Lily disappeared. But now he wasn't afraid. He was furious. He plunged into the woods, weaving between trees, following a scent trail that had been disturbed. Covered, hidden until now. Officers spread out, flashlights slicing through the shadows. The further they went, the colder the air seemed to grow. After several hundred feet, Rex froze. He stood rigid beside a cluster of old wooden logs and overgrown weeds. Then he barked once deep and commanding. "Over here!" Daniels shouted. Detectives rushed in, scanning the area. Something glinted beneath the brush. An officer knelt and lifted a small object, Lily's missing hair clip. The one her mother said she'd been wearing when she vanished. A second item appeared beneath the leaves. A torn piece of fabric from Lily's pink dress. The detectives exchanged grim looks, but the worst discovery came next, behind the logs. Partially buried in dirt, they found drag marks, just the length of a child's body. And next to them, boot prints matching the exact style issued to local officers. Every head turned slowly toward Daniels, but Rex didn't look at Daniels. He turned his head back toward the cemetery, toward the one officer he had growled at all day. Grant. Back at the cemetery, the officers' radios crackled to life, filling the hall with static and overlapping voices. Daniels lifted his handset, breathless. "We found evidence: Lily's belongings, drag marks, and boot prints. They match. Law enforcement issue." The room stopped breathing. Rex pushed through the crowd the moment he re-entered, his steps sharp and purposeful. He didn't pause. He didn't sniff. He didn't hesitate. He walked directly toward Officer Grant, teeth bared in a rumbling growl that sounded nothing like grief-only accusation. Grant stumbled backward, eyes darting wildly around the room. Hey, get that dog away from me," he shouted, voice cracking under the weight of Panic, but Daniels wasn't looking at Rex anymore. He was looking at Grant's boots, fresh mud, the same reddish-brown. Dirt from the creek bed where Lily was found. Grant, a detective said slowly, approaching him. Where were you the night Lily disappeared? Grant's pupils shrank. I told you. At home. You already have my statement. Yes, the detective said, stepping closer. We do, but the footprints at the scene suggest otherwise. Grant's shoulders stiffened. He looked around desperately, as if searching for anyone to save him. But every face had turned cold. Every officer stepped back. Only Rex moved forward, growling louder, ears flat, body low, ready to strike. Lily's mother let out a choking sob. You were supposed to help find her, she whispered. Grant's mask cracked. She wouldn't stop screaming. He blurted suddenly, his voice trembling. I didn't mean to, I just wanted her quiet for a moment. She kept running, she saw me. His voice broke as the truth spilled out, horrific and unstoppable. It was an accident. I swear it was an accident. The hall exploded in gasps and cries. Rex lunged. And only Daniel's grip on the harness kept him from taking Grant down himself. Officers swarmed Grant, slamming him in handcuffs as he shouted excuses no one wanted to hear, but Rex didn't look at him anymore. The dog returned to the coffin, laying his head gently beside Lily's once more, because justice had finally spoken. As Officer Grant was dragged out of the funeral hall in handcuffs, the room fell into a stunned, heavy silence. No one spoke. No one moved. It was as if grief had shifted into something else, shock, betrayal, and a hollow ache that settled deep in every chest. But in the midst of the chaos, Rex walked back to the coffin with slow, careful steps. His growls fading into soft whimpers, he rested his head gently beside Lily once more. His body curled protectively around her tiny frame. It was no longer a warning, no longer fear. It was goodbye. Lily's mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. She hesitated at the edge of the coffin, her hand trembling as she reached out and touched Rex's fur. The dog looked up at her, eyes filled with a sorrow that mirrored her own. For the first time since the nightmare began, she didn't collapse in grief. She found strength in Rex's presence. Thank you, she whispered through her tears. Thank you for not giving up on her. Daniel stood behind them, shoulders tense, jaw clenched. He had seen canine loyalty before, but nothing like this, nothing so pure, so unwavering that it uncovered a truth every human had missed. Rex didn't just serve. He loved. The priest stepped forward, voice trembling. Let us honor her with the truth, and with the justice she deserved. The lid of the coffin was slowly lowered. Rex tried to follow, pressing his nose against the wood until Daniels gently pulled him back. The dog let out a soft cry, one final farewell as the lid closed completely. Outside, the sky had cleared. Sunlight spilled onto the steps, warm and golden like Lily's hair. Justice had been served. Her story was no longer hidden, and Rex had protected her until the very end. The funeral ended with a quiet heaviness, but also with something no one expected: clarity. Lily's truth was no longer buried beneath lies, panic, or confusion. It had surfaced, carried not by human intelligence or routine investigation, but by the unwavering loyalty of a German shepherd who refused to let her final moments be misunderstood. Outside the cemetery, people gathered in small clusters, speaking in hushed tones. Officers stood near their vehicles, stunned by how close they had been to missing the real story. Daniels knelt beside Rex, gently stroking his fur. The dog sat still, his eyes fixed on the cemetery gates as if waiting for Lily to run out one last time and wrap her tiny arms around his neck. You did more than any of us, Daniels whispered. You gave her justice. Rex pressed his head into Daniel's hand. A soft whimper escaping him, grief and relief intertwined. Lily's parents approached slowly. Her mother knelt before Rex, tears streaming freely, but her voice soft and steady. "You were her hero," she said. "Even when we didn't know. You did." Rex licked her hand gently, a promise, a farewell, and a bond that would never break. As the family walked away, Daniel stood and looked toward the horizon. The sun dipped behind the trees, casting warm, golden light across the cemetery, as if the world itself was offering Lily a final, peaceful send-off. Some stories end with darkness, but this one ended with truth, painful, heartbreaking, but necessary.